Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our purpose is to help the world one starfish or one person at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I'm excited for our guest today. Leslie and I just met. She's down in Chicago, which we talked about the water and how beautiful it is. She's a best-selling author of Profit Generating Pipeline. So that information will be in the show notes. Sales strategist and 2025 photography award-winning person at the Montana State Fair, just for a fun fact, which is kind of cool. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm already smiling just from our chat before we hit record.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, let's get into things. We talked briefly about some of your past. You grew up in Montana, which I actually have a really good friend that's very successful that also grew up in Montana, but that's not typically, I guess it's like a stereotype of Montana. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and then what got you, into corporate world from backcountry kind of country.
Yeah. I know it's a really valid question. It's so funny because Montana, like one of the fun facts that I used to tell people when I first moved to Chicago is that we have twice as many cattle as we do people
Hmm.
in Montana, which I think that's probably still true.
Probably true.
But at the time, the entire state had a population under 1 million, even though it's the fourth largest state in terms of geography. So there just aren't that many people in Montana to have folks go out into the world, especially because it's such a beautiful state. People don't people don't often leave. I did because I like, I just really had this craving to explore the world. My mom said that I started talking about leaving when I was like 5 years old, that I wanted to go out and explore the world. So I moved after college from a town of 60,000 to this city of 6 million. And I've been here since almost 15, over 15 years, and absolutely love it. I was saying offline that I just continue to be like enamored by Chicago. It's such an incredible place, but it was definitely a transition. And when I moved, Angela, I moved without a job. So I literally just picked up my entire life. I sold my car to have enough money to be able to like move and afford my
Wow.
first month's rent in Chicago, and just hoped for the best. I can't even imagine doing it now, but at the time it felt like it was my calling, so I did it.
Wow. And why Chicago back then?
I am maybe a small bit of a type A personality. And so the way that I decided where to move is I created an Excel document and I put all of the cities that I thought I would be interested in moving to that were over a quarter of a million in population on the left-hand side. And like in my head at the time, a quarter of a million was like such a big population. And now I'm
Right.
like,
Well,
oh,
it's
that's
one
like
quarter of Montana.
yeah, right. And then at the top of the Excel doc, I put everything that was important to me, and then I gave it point values weighted by how important it was to me. And I literally filled in the document, and Chicago had the most points. So I sold all my belongings and moved here without a job.
Holy, that is such a crazy story. How old were you? What did your parents think of this?
They were pretty excited for me. I was
Hmm.
23, 22 or 23 when I moved.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, they were excited. They knew I was going to leave Montana. They knew that I think they really trusted me. I am somebody who like figures out how to make it work. Like I will brute force success if that is what is required of me. So
Hmm.
I think they were excited to go out, let me explore and pursue my dream of living out of state and having more access to explore the world. And it was tough. The first few months were really tough. Like I was skipping meals. I was like walking home from I got a job, but when I had it, like until I made some money, I was walking home from work because I literally couldn't afford the train fare two directions. So I had to decide which direction to walk. Like there was a few pretty dicey months, but it worked out. And here I am 15 years later, still in love with the city, working a job, running my own company as a full-time founder, working a 4-day work week, like just living my best life. So it all worked out.
Wow, that's crazy. And do you have siblings?
I do. I have a little
Did they
brother.
leave or did they stay?
They also left. He's
Okay.
a lawyer,
Wow.
um, like a super accomplished lawyer. I never remember what all the things are in law school, but it's like the legal review and the cum laude. And he did all of that. He's so lovely, so smart, and he lives in Denver. And he has a family in Denver, so I spend a lot of time out there.
Oh, wow. And your parents are still in Montana, though.
My parents are in Montana, but they snowbird as well.
Okay.
Because who's trying to stay in Montana all summer if you have an alternative. So they head to Arizona, and snowbird down there.
Wow, they must be so proud of you guys. That's so cool. Okay, so we went to Chicago and like how you decided to go to Chicago. That's so funny. I don't even know that. I don't even know how to like point form a city like that. That I was like, I should learn how to do this so I could figure out where I want to go. I just randomly go places. I'm like, there's an ocean. Let's go there.
I
Um,
mean, that's good. I do that too, though.
it's kind of my basic because I'm like, well, the price is right and there's an ocean. Let's go there.
That's I just
Um,
went to Scotland and I was like, oh, this place is on the water and has good trees. Send me there.
You might be in Scotland soon.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you got into corporate America, and you were working your way up, it sounds like pretty successfully for about 15 years we talked about before. Tell us a little bit about, that journey and then what got you out of it into what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I came to Chicago. I was applying for jobs. And I had gotten a sociology degree and then a business administration degree with a focus on marketing and international relations. And in my head, I thought I would use my college degrees. Silly me, tale as old as time. So I was applying for all of these jobs, like in marketing or in a lot of like nonprofits, and they were offering like 28,000 to $35,000 as a salary. And it was that, that was it. That was going to be your salary if you worked exceptionally hard. Maybe in a year they would give you a 3% raise. And I was doing the math and I was also thinking about how hard I work. And I don't know how I felt so self-assured at 22, 23, but I was like, that's the amount that I'm going to contribute to these companies wherever I choose to work is worth more than the $30,000 that some of these places are willing to pay me. So I applied for a few sales jobs because then I could be, more in control of
Mm,
my financial future. And I ended up taking a job with an $18,000 base, but an uncapped commission structure.
right.
And like I said, those first few months were extremely, extremely tough. But then my first full year with that company, I made $56,000. So it was very validating. And even though I like sort of begrudgingly took the job because I thought sales was sort of like a gross, embarrassing, icky profession, I realized almost immediately that all of the narratives I had about sales were untrue, and that the most successful sales executives around me were actually the folks that were super curious and super smart and really cared about their customers and were working towards win-win outcomes. So it like I blossomed a love and respect of the profession of sales, like at a pretty young age. um and I then just made sales, like the profession of sales, my passion, and I really, really wanted to become a proper chief revenue officer by 40. Like, really like own the entire revenue function, have a big team, strive for the alignment between marketing and sales, that everybody is after. And I worked so hard. I was employee number one at a startup, working 80, 100-hour weeks. I was in some pretty toxic sales environments, just grinding. And I kept burning out. And I got to the point where I finally asked myself the question, is this even the right goal for you anymore? Like, is CRO the thing that you still want?
Mhm.
And at the time, my identity was so tied up in like my title, the amount of money I was making, who I was working for, like my job and my personal identity were really tied up. So it was a super tough conversation to have with myself. Like, has everything I've been working for the last 15 years been for naught? Like, I've been working towards the wrong goal. And what I ultimately decided is that CRO was not the most important thing for me. being able to have more freedom in my life and being able to have a greater impact on the sales community, on more companies, turned out to be more important than CRO. So I quit my corporate job, and I had been running my company, the sales like go-to-market agency, as like a passion project side hustle, and I made it my full-time gig about 3.5 years ago, and I've been doing that since. So I asked myself some really tough questions about whether or not the CRO role and like pathing to that by 40 was even the right goal for me to set. And it was I felt some grief when I decided to kind of abandon this corporate goal that I've been striving towards. And instead, I've been doing side work in my current business, a sales led go to market agency, and thought, why not test out founder life? Maybe I love it, maybe I hate it, and I just go back to corporate. But what's the worst thing that happens? And so I quit my corporate job. I bet on myself. That was 3.5 years ago, and I love the work I do now. It's exactly where I'm supposed to be.
That's so cool. So tell us a little bit about what you do in sales and as a sales strategist. And obviously you wrote a book now. And yeah, tell us a little bit about that and what your primary person is that I guess you're helping.
Yeah. So in when I was in corporate, I spent that entire time both as a individual contributor, as well as a frontline, second line, third line sales leader. So I've sort of done all of the roles. And when I chose the founder journey, I gave myself a lot of permission to kind of say yes to any work that sounded interesting to me, where I thought I could help somebody and really, share ROI. And what I found is that folks were really, really struggling with top of the funnel work. So things like, who should I reach out to? What should I say to them? How, where should I be contacting them at? How do I build sequences? How do I run a discovery meeting? And those were questions that I was extraordinarily well positioned to answer. So I really focused the majority of my client work on outbound, like lead generation, or the title of my book is Profit Generating Pipeline. So it's how to help folks earn trust and drive revenue at the top of the funnel. And it's been great. It's both been great to um, get to lean into my own knowledge. And like what I've realized is that transmitting knowledge to others is part of my sacred calling. So getting to do that as a profession is just so extraordinarily special. And then to take what I have been teaching my teams in corporate America and then rolling out with my clients as a founder and put it into a book. And then to have that book debut as a top 50 USA Today bestseller is it's very validating.
Yeah, when you've worked hard for it too. So, what are some tips that you would give someone? Obviously, get the book, but what are some of the things in the book that someone would find that would be tangible tips that would help them, I guess, with sales?
Yeah, so the book is three parts. In the middle is the 9-step proven formula to build the profit generating pipeline. A few of my favorite, like very actionable things that work, honestly, even if you're not in like B2B sales, is a litmus test to earn the right. And what I mean by that, Angela, is before you show up to a phone call with somebody, before you send somebody an email, ask yourself, what have I done to earn the right to even ask for this person's attention, let alone their time, their consideration, their business? And
Mm-hmm.
often, as I am, like auditing how people prepare for meetings or how they research before they start sending out, sales communications, it's very seller centric. Like it's a bit selfish, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
being honest. It's about, I'm your sales rep, our product, our service, our features, our companies. And you've simply not earned the right to ask a total stranger to care about you or your company or what you do. But they absolutely care about their problems, like the things that are top of mind for them, their opportunities they want to seize, the challenges that they want to overcome. So the biggest tip is to pivot your outreach, whether it's marketing or sales, from being very product focused to being problem centric. And a super, super easy audit that I can give people if they want to go through some like of their sales and marketing emails after this is to look for the amount of times that you use I, we, and our language as opposed to you, your, they, them language. Because if it's all like I, we, our, it means that it's a very like self-centric email and it's just not going to earn the right to the attention of that prospect.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I was just thinking about that in my own sales. I'm like, it's a good question to ask. What have I done to deserve this right, I guess, basically to talk to that person? Um, yeah. And so back to sales is fun. So when you got into sales, if you think back to when you were actually pretty successful right away, quote successful, you obviously worked for it. What was some of the rejection that you went through? Because that is, I think, what scares most people about sales is the perceived rejection. So tell us a little bit about the rejection you went through, if you remember, and
Yeah.
how did you handle it and grow with thicker skin? I don't know if you want to call it that. So a lot of people call it that, to be able to handle it and continue on to become successful.
Definitely a thicker skin. Absolutely. For me, rejection popped up in two ways. One was actually some rejection that I felt within my sales team or within my sales organization. I
Hmm.
joined quite a large company. So I was on an open sales floor with about 200 reps. It was a lot of different divisions and business units. My team was like maybe 50 of that entire group. But I pushed back on some of the things that I was being taught. Like I tried them at first because I didn't know any better and these people looked successful and they were my bosses and I did what they said to do and it was like giving me anxiety at night because they just
Hmm.
like they were kind of icky strategies like high pressure. It was a pretty transactional environment. And so part of the rejection I faced early on was that I wanted to try new things and people were telling me that I was like stupid and wrong and I was going to fail and I had to sort of, still pull all the way up to the table and like trust my intuition. Which is, funny enough, what really made me so incredibly successful early on is leaning into that buyer centricity, even though that wasn't the norm. But even with that like buyer centric attitude, I started selling during the Great Recession. I started selling in 2008. And the group I was selling to were Fortune 500 chief financial officers. So I was cold calling CFOs of Fortune 500 companies at the height of the Great Recession as my very first sales job. Talk
Oh,
about rejection.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I was making like 200, 250 calls a day, cold calls a day with no dialer, just absolutely smashing the phone. And I would maybe reach like 3 to 4 people a day. And let's say I reached 4 people. One of them would like absolutely curse me out, like just take me to task for even having the audacity to like call them and offer help because they were just think about how ugh, like there's some data that I quote in the book that something like 92% of financial service professionals that were working in leadership positions at the time of the Great Recession reported having PTSD. Right, so they were struggling and I was getting a lot of the brunt of that because I was just a stranger on the phone that they could take it out on. um so like one would really 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 say some mean stuff, two would just kind of hang up on me, and I was lucky if I got one conversation out of those like 200 250 dials a day. So it was rejection in that I just wasn't reaching people, which is hard, right? If you're all day long you're on the phone and you are only getting a few people to answer, and then when those few people answer, to have some of them be so mean, and really make some personal attacks. It was the height of what you might imagine as rejection in a sales role. But to your point, it did make my skin a lot thicker. And it also set me up for tremendous success later in my career because it instilled in me that, like,
Work ethic.
you have to, yeah, like you have to recognize like this, what emotions this person you're reaching out to might be feeling. It's not actually about me and my rejection. It's about what's going on in their lives. And when you are lucky enough to reach somebody, get to the point. Like they are busy, they are stressed out, they are frazzled. If you do not have something relevant and valuable to say immediately, they're probably going to hang up on you. So it was an extraordinarily tough job, but I also credit it for setting up a lot of the mindsets and the habits that allowed me tremendous success later in my career.
Okay, so I want to touch on this for anyone listening because it's crazy. So 250 calls a day. How many days a week were you making 250 calls and for how long? And out of that, like every day you wouldn't get a yes. So out of 250 calls, how many days would it take to get a yes?
Um,
Approximate.
so 5 days a week. So I was like, that was
Five
what I
days a
was
week.
doing.
Okay, so you're making
Hmm.
500, 750
So like a
calls.
thousand plus, yeah, at least 1,000 calls a week, every single week.
Okay.
And I would probably get one good call where the person was interested in like potentially buying. It was a pretty transactional environment. It was like a maybe 24 to 48 hour sales cycle, which at least I had that so I could get some wins and some dopamine hits. So if I was making 1,000 calls a week, I if I was having a good week, I reached 5 people that were interested, and of those 5 I would maybe close one. So it
That
was
is
tough.
hard numbers. Holy.
Yeah, it was tough math. It was, yeah.
Wow. And, like I said, so many people listening here, you're sitting there going, I just know in my environment, people are like, they make like 10 calls a day. And that's like a big deal. So, if everyone in sales was making 100 to 200 to 250 calls a day, just want you to think like as you're listening to this, like what would your business be like if you actually went out and did that for 1 week? And then never again, you'd probably kill. That's crazy. One out of 1,000, really, wow. Um, and so whenever you were going through that, because a lot of people, when they're going through that, the number one thing I see, with a lot of people is then they start being like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. All the voices of doubt. Did you have that at all? And if so, how did you like, what made you decide to work through it? Why didn't you just, the self-belief you obviously had, which I attribute a lot to your parents, but maybe you attribute to something else. Where did that come from? And how does someone build that where you knew you're like 35,000, 40,000, I'm worth more than that. And therefore I'm going to go out and make 250 calls a day to prove I'm worth more than that, basically, and to reach my full potential.
Yeah. I mean, it was like
Mind blowing.
I think knowing or believing that I was worth more was a combination of like just being naive and young and being like, I deserve more than this. A little bit of ego because I was extraordinarily active all through high school and college, like held a ton of leadership positions, was a student body vice president, was an ambassador, was president of a lot of clubs. And so like I had run a 750,000, like a $750,000 budget in my last year of college. And I was like, I don't know, like I had done a lot of hard work and I'd already held a lot of leadership positions. So then when these people were offering me jobs for like table scraps with just like peon sort of work, I was just like, absolutely not. And then certainly it was because I came from a great community, not just my parents, but my entire extended community. They both told me I was capable of accomplishing anything I was willing to work hard at. But also like kept me grounded. Like they weren't the like, you can go to the moon if you want. They were like, you probably can't go to the moon because women actually aren't really being welcomed into space programs at this time. But like, what's an alternative goal that you could set? So it's, it was a really I think a supportive but realistic upbringing that I had. And so when I got into that sales job and was pounding the phones and absolutely had some of those feelings of self-doubt, like, can I do this? Why am I doing this? Um, the reasons I stayed, I think were myriad. And I think part of it was that I am really, really stubborn. And if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to figure out how to do it, even if I have to brute force it. And while I would have had a soft place to land if I didn't succeed in Chicago and had to go back to Montana, I was extremely committed to not failing here.
Right.
So a lot of that was like the intrinsic motivation of like, I have made this big bet. I have gone, I've left the nest, like I'm going to make it work. I will not fail.
Mm.
Part of it too was that I was in a pretty toxic sales environment with some like pretty nasty narratives. And I was stubborn and I was like, I will show you that like my way works, that I can make this work, that like being kind to people and leading with curiosity is a way that sales can get done. And it did. Like I ended up breaking records, and was, very quickly promoted into leadership myself. So it was, I think, long story short, I'm just an extraordinarily stubborn person, Angela.
Well, nothing wrong with that. It got you where you're at. And yeah, if you're listening to this, just keep going. Like, don't quit. Winners don't quit. And
Yeah,
quitters don't win. So,
it's
um,
true.
don't
It's true.
don't
And
quit.
like, let me also say that if times were different, like, think about how long ago that was. That was, what, 16 years ago? I do not think that anybody should be showing up to work every single day and being asked to make 250 cold calls. Like, unless you were like doing telesales, you know what I mean? They're like doing a survey type job where you're just like, that's the only thing you do. The state of B2B sales as we're about ready to head into 2026 is one that demands a more strategic approach. So that means you need to not just be using the phone, but also be using social media, be using things like podcasts to get inbound leads, be, really strategic about your copywriting. Um, and I think maybe most importantly, you have to be really thoughtful about who you are reaching out to, why you are reaching out to them, meaning like, why is it relevant to them to get a call from you? And why would it be worth their time to talk right now? And that's impossible to do at like the 1,000 to 1,500 call a week volume. So I don't think folks should necessarily be doing that. But to your point, people are quick to say something's dead or something doesn't work. And it's not that it's dead or it doesn't work. They're just not working hard enough at it.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I know lots of people that are like, this isn't working. I'm like, how many people did you call yesterday? They're like,
And they're
oh
like
man, like
11.
hundreds. I'm like, let's get out your phone. It's like, oh, we called seven. Seven. And how long was that? 4 hours. We've got a problem, Mr. Mrs. So the problem is not people aren't answering. The problem is you're just not calling enough people. Don't have to call 250. I agree with that. But if you're in any kind of sales, you're making calls or you're sending texts or you're sending messages or you're sending emails, and it's a numbers business, all of it, however that
I
is.
know.
Um,
It's so funny because I think we're constantly fed these false dichotomies that you either have to take a quantity approach or quality approach, or that like I don't know, and it's like both are true.
yeah.
It is a numbers game. Like if you are not reaching out to enough people, you're not giving
Even
yourself
if
a
you have the
chance to
best
find the
script,
right
the best thing
people.
in the world, you reach out to one person and this is what I love. I love sales too for this because like even if you suck, the even a blind this is what I used to tell myself when I got into it. Even a blind squirrel can find a nut. So like I'll figure it out if I talk to enough people
Mhm.
eventually. Like you literally can sit outside the street corner and just like hammer people and there is better ways. And this is what Leslie teaches you better ways. But a lot of it is quantity. And
Yeah.
then, like she said, know the people. And I love that you'll be able to get where you have better results with less activity and less work. Um,
Yeah, well said.
or you can work the same hard, but you'll get better results, however you do that. Um, and that's what's cool about sales. You have unlimited income. And I just admire that about you because like a lot of people don't get into sales because they really don't believe in themselves. Because you
Mm.
have to, I knew when I got into like financial services and sales, I knew that I would win similar because I'm like, I work hard. I know that I can figure this thing out because I work hard. And like so many
Yeah.
people, when you talk about sales, and I'm sure you've had this lots where, like, because you've been in the sales for so long, where you've seen lots of people come and go, and they have better skills. They are like better with quote people than some of the people that are winning because but they don't believe that they can actually win. Because when you put your hand into commission sales, especially, you have to believe that you can write your own paycheck, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah, it's
trusting that
true.
35 or 40,000 and being like, yeah, but at least that's steady. At least I can count on it. At least I really don't have to work that hard either. I can get that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I work with a lot of folks that are maybe earlier in their career, like both as a sales leader, I managed full cycle AEs, I managed inside sales reps, SDRs. So I managed a lot of folks that were maybe in the first like 5 years of their career. And then I see that a lot with my clients as well, that I'll be working with all of their sales team, which often includes some like fresh out of college, or even if they praise be don't require college as a requirement to get an entry level sales job. And it's pretty clear straight away who's going to be successful. And it has little to do with how smart they are. I mean, you have to have some critical thinking skills. Like,
Hmm.
say like sales, like good salespeople are quite smart because they are very like adaptable and they can see around the corner and they're very prescriptive. But those early indicators, the number one thing that I look for is that grit, that resiliency. And that is the primary indicator of whether or not somebody will succeed in the role. Because if they are gritty, then they will take the time to learn what they don't already know instead of just expect themselves to either have it or don't have it. And if they don't have it, they're like, oh, it's too hard or this job isn't for me and I'm going to quit.
Hmm. Great book on that. Mindset by Carol Dweck.
I
Dwyer,
love that book.
Dweck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fixed
Dweck.
versus
Yeah.
growth. Yeah, growth mindset. Um,
If you like that book, you should also read Grit by Angela Duckworth, which is one of my favorite all time books.
Okay, I like it. I love reading. So this is great. Very cool. I can tell we could go forever, but we will honor our listeners' time. So I always have three final questions, and then anything we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for listeners. And guys, if you want to reach out to Leslie, like I said, we'll have all the links for her book, for her information, how to reach her, all that stuff will definitely be in the show notes. So definitely reach out if you're in sales or you're getting into sales or get the book, that kind of thing for sure. You can tell you could learn a lot already. Okay, first and final question is if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
If somebody's looking for their purpose, this sounds so cliche, but I would honestly say trust your intuition, because I think we all get so heavily influenced by trying to meet the expectations of others or trying to bend to societal narratives that we can ignore what is we already know to be true in our heart. So trust your intuition.
I like it. Second question, what's a favorite quote and why?
What's a favorite quote and why? These are like exceptional questions. I I'm not sure if I have a favorite quote. There's one on this. I'm gonna grab this
Sure.
this very old picture frame over here because I have two quotes on it that I think are quite beautiful. One is listen to the passion of your soul, set the wings of your spirit free, and let not a single song go unsung. But the one I really like is from Angel Kyoto Williams, who's the founder of the Urban Peace Project. And it says, the answer to having a better life is not about getting a better life. It's about changing how we see the one we have right now. Isn't that good? And I'm such a big believer in like the power of choosing our attitudes. And now we have all the data to back it up that we literally can rewire our neural pathways to bias towards positivity if we put deliberate practice into that activity. So I love that thought.
Those are so good. I love those. All right, third and final question. What's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Oh, golly. Um, joy, like something about joy. She led a like she brought joy, she led a joyful life. I would love I would love to leave behind a legacy of joy.
Ooh, I like that. That's cool. All right. We run into someone in a coffee shop. They listen to this. They're learning, they're gritty. And they listen to this. What's something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful for our listeners?
Um, so I like something that I hear, and maybe this is just a bit of like my echo chamber that I'm in, is that people are under the impression that tech sales is somehow like the superior sales job.
Hmm.
And there's all these boot camps of like how to break into tech sales and tech sales. Um, there's a lot of other sales jobs out there behind tech sales. So if you are somebody that is like maybe currently in sales and you're hearing that narrative and you feel like you need to break into tech sales, like maybe with a grain of salt, take that advice. Or if you are thinking about going into sales, like remember that there are a lot of really lucrative sales jobs that are outside of like SaaS and tech, and that there's a lot of, I think, really amazing sales roles that aren't those traditional like sales development rep or AE roles. Like growing up as a full cycle AE and owning the entire cycle and making my way to tech sales later in my career is something I'm so, so, so grateful for, because I think I just developed much stronger habits as a result. So yeah, maybe just an invitation to folks to, like, I don't know, just be open to the types of roles and the types of organizations that can offer them a great career in sales.
Cool. I love it. Guys, I'm sure you want to share this. You have lots of friends in sales or thinking about getting in sales or anything to do with that. So definitely share this episode. If we can go out there, if we can change one life or one starfish at a time together, we can help change the world. Thanks for being on, Leslie.
Thank you.